Now, when you start to look deeper into a lot of these things, you'll come to notice that the ancient Americans and the modern day Americans have a lot of these things in common. And with that, you will also notice that this region has none of these in common. These regions where slaves supposedly come from: Northern Africa, Egypt, Western, South Africa, Middle Africa. And let me stop being ridiculous. Of course, I know the reason the ancient Americans and the Black Americans all have these particular things in common is because they were found in abundance in the Americas. Of course, I know that. Let me stop being ridiculous. But correct me if I'm wrong. Most of these things are not known in any of these areas to any large degree, to these ex-slave export areas. And of all the Africans that I have met myself personally, forgive me for being stereotypical, but of these things, let's just say tobacco, weed, and cornbread, I haven't met an African yet that partakes in any of these things. And that's just the strangest thing to me. Wait. Y'all don't have tobacco at y'all country?
Yeah, we do.
Y'all do? Yeah, y'all don't have weed in y'all country? Oh, wait, y'all do?
Yeah, we do.
Wait, y'all ain't got cornbread in your country?
But not like this. We don't do it like this.
So I don't know if I'm crazy or tripping, but these things I know to be fact. Now we're gonna rewind for a minute back to the thought experiment with you in the driver's seat, with you as the captain of the ship. It's your mission, it's your boat. You got to make this thing happen. I'm gonna skip past the hard part. We already got the slaves in the boat. We just gotta get them over to America, where ain't none of us never actually been. We not even actually sure how to get there, or even if it's actually there in the first place. And now, of course, we all know that we have to take as much supplies as we possibly can in order to survive, but we got a limited supply, so we can only take as much of whatever everything as we can and rely on what resources we have once we get there. So, what do you do when you get there? What are the first steps to colonizing a country? We know there's a great possibility they went from tents to cabins, from boat to wagon. Now, when you got out the boat, did you bring the wagon with you, or do you got to go make a wagon? Did you bring your horses with you, or do you got to go and hunt down some horses? And of course, we know through research exactly what they say happened. And I'm not going to spoil the adventure for anybody. It's best you research things on your own. But I will tell you for sure that no matter which way you run the scenario, is being able to communicate with the natives, which becomes obvious when you go over any amount of literature on the subject. You got to be in touch with the natives, you got to be in touch with the land, or else you might not make it. And to tap back in on the Mansa of Mali, King Musa, I'm not trying to take Musa from the Africans or from the continent of Africa, but we got to put things in its proper perspective, make it make sense. We can't just read words on no piece of paper and think we know something. It don't work that way. That's what all those scholars do. How does that work out? Now, these scholars done read these books that we all debating over, we just coming up with and fumbling around with thinking we know something now. They all read all of these books. They wrote some of these books. So they know. And they sitting up pretending like they don't know. It don't happen. It happened like this. The same scholars have already read these books. They wrote, revised these books, approved them for public consumption, and they still turn around and tell us the nonsense story to keep us going round and around in circles. And that's why I chose this particular map to serve as an illustration. And you got to forgive me, it's such a poor copy, but I'm not spending much time or money on this subject. So I have to ask you to use your imagination, conceptualize. The map itself is asking you to use your imagination on many other facts that it depicts. Facts being presented as true. We accept these facts as true. So I'm not asking you to accept my facts as true. I'm asking you to think for yourself. I've looked at this map long enough to see some discrepancies. If you look at this map long enough, you might notice some things that just don't add up. And any map for that matter. I do have a full length version of this map. You have to check that out yourself. But these are things that I've always found fascinating. So I've always looked at it a little differently, I suppose. But when you look at things from an unbiased perspective, you'll see some things don't add up. And I wanted to go on a little geographical adventure here with you guys, but we're going to have to save that for another time. I think it's important that I point this out first here before everyone gets up in arms. So to finish reading from the Wicked Encyclopedia, as a disclaimer, I would advise anyone who wants to know anything to not refer to this site whatsoever. I don't got nothing for them. I don't have nothing against them either, but just not a good source of knowledge. I only went here on this particular subject because most people should already know about this, have looked into this, or at least know how. It pretty much tells the same basic story across the board. So it's quick, it's easy, and it proves my point. Except the fact that if you read the whole article, and many other articles and such never actually tell you exactly how he got so rich. They never tell you exactly how he became to be known as the richest man ever in history. They never actually told you exactly how he became known as the richest man in history. And that's one heck of a title. In my opinion, his people gave him the wealth. They gave him the gold. The people of his kingdom, the people from other kingdoms, they gave to the empire willingly, not as slaves, not being forced into doing it. That's the only way you can become the richest man in history. In my opinion, in my humble opinion. I'm gonna leave that part out about the other richest man in the world who has some godlike powers supposedly, and everybody giving to the empire is what made it so rich for now. But to read a little bit more about their rendition, it says depictions of Mansa Musa, ruler of the Mali Empire in the 14th century from the 1375 Catalan Atlas. The label reads, the Black Lord is called Musa Meli and is the sovereign of the land of the Black people of Geneva or Ghana. Wait, the same Ghana that they telling all Black people to come home to Ghana to today? It says, the king is the richest and noblest of all these lands due to the abundance of gold that is extracted from his lands. Let me read that again. It says, the label below the Catalan Atlas reads, this Black Lord is called Musa Meli and is the sovereign of the land of the Black peoples of Geneva. Geneva, also known as Ghana. Can't even get through it. It's just too many things just already just don't add up. It says, this king is the richest and noblest of all these lands due to the abundance of gold that is extracted from his lands. Keep that in mind. Here's a little known fact about Black heritage. Ghana did they did a whole campaign on calling Black Americans home per se, or inviting Black people to come to Ghana, come home to Ghana. They did a whole campaign campaign on that, not so much in acknowledgement of the transatlantic slave trade, but more so acknowledging the fact that we are of the same tribes. They are less like the African tribes and more like Black American. And see, that's why they did the whole thing. Well, yeah, come on over. Yeah, bring your family, bring your friend, have a good time. And then when you got there, they was like, nah, y'all niggas, y'all ain't got to go home, but y'all can't stay here. Y'all got to get up out of here. Y'all messing up the church's money. But I'm not going into that right now. I want to point this out right here. And I'm going to just scroll down and skim through because, again, a lot of people already went over all of this, but I think we could have overlooked some things. So we're going to pick up right here. Historical sources. It says, much of what is known about Musa comes from Arabic sources written after his Hajj, especially the writings of al-Umari and Ibn Khaldun. While in Cairo during his Hajj, Musa befriended officials such as Ibn Amir Hajib, who learned about him and his country from him and later passed on that information to historians such as al-Umari. Additional information comes from two 17th century manuscripts written in Timbuktu, the Tariq ibn al-Mukhtar and the Tariq al-Sudan. Oral tradition as performed by the Jilu or Jili, also known as griots. Oh, you mean like the griots in the mountains and the islands off California? I'm gonna have to do a video. Includes relatively little information about Musa compared to some other parts of the history of Mali. It goes on. Under lineage and ascension to the throne, it says, Musa's father was named Fagaleya, and his mother may have been named Kanku. Fagaleya was the son of Abu Bakr, a brother of Sunjata, the first Mansa of the Mali Empire. Ibn Batuta, who visited Mali during the reign of Musa's brother Suleiman. Wait, I know you could play with the words, but that Suleiman, during the reign of Musa's brother Solomon, said that Musa's grandfather was named Sariq Jada. Sariq Jada may be another name for Sunjata, who was actually Musa's great uncle. The date of Musa's birth is unknown, but he still appeared to be a young man in 1324. So that's around 100 years before Columbus, mind you. The Tariq al-Fatish claims that Musa accidentally killed Kanku, his mother, at some point prior to his Hajj. It says, Musa ascended to power in the early 1300s under unclear circumstances. According to Musa's own account, his predecessor as Mansa of Mali, presumably Muhammad ibn Q, launched 2 expeditions to explore the Atlantic Ocean, the same Atlantic Ocean connected to America. It says 200 ships for the first exploratory mission and 2,000 ships for the second. It's a lot of ships. See, I can't even go through it. Just too much, just not making sense. But let me get through this and I'll come back. It says, the Mansa led the second expedition himself and appointed Musa as his deputy to rule the empire until he returned. When he did not return, Musa was crowned as Mansa himself, making a transfer of the line of succession from the dependents of Sunjata to the descendants of his brother Abu Bakr. Some modern historians have cast doubt on Musa's version of events, suggesting he may have deposed his predecessor and devised a story about the voyage to explain how he took power. Nonetheless, the possibility of such a voyage has been taken seriously by several historians. Full-blown stop. Full-blown stop right there. Just stop. Stop the press. Stop it. Now, of course, they can't say that 2,200 ships made it because it don't fit the narrative. 2,200 well-prepared, decked out ships. If Mali was as rich as they said they was, ships that they claim never made it, but there's no evidence of them still to this day. Now, that's quite remarkable. I already said that. Let me say something different. Zoic scoop, nigga, what? Damn. So they sent 200 ships the first time and never heard back. So they decided to send 2,000 ships because they have exact numbers. The second time, I don't know who's more insane, them for doing it or us for believing. That's more ships than Columbus had. He made it just fine. Columbus and all of them. Or no, wait a minute. They didn't make it just fine. They lost people on the way and the rest of them almost died. They never really made it to the place that they were going for. They ended up somewhere else altogether. But they made it though. They made it in the history books. They made it though. And they put them down in history books. And once you know the real definition of some of these words, like modern historians, the sentence reads a little differently. It says, some narrative shapers have cast doubt on Musa's version of events. It says, suggesting he may have deposed his predecessor and devised the story about the voyage to explain how he took power. Nonetheless, the possibility of a voyage has been taken seriously by several historians, and I guess they're given sources. And I'm gonna skip through because I want to get through this, and this gonna be the last part, but this the best part. So it's just sorry for the extra all the extra commentary, y'all, but it's just so hard to get through this when you look with woke eyes. You see the lies. So, let's see. It says, early reign. Musa was a young man when he became Mansa, possibly in his early 20s. Given the grandeur of his subsequent Hajj, it is likely that Musa spent much of his early reign preparing for it. Among these preparations would likely have been raids to capture and enslave people from neighboring lands, as Musa's entourage would include many thousands of enslaved people. The historian Michael Gomez estimates that Mali may have captured over 6,000 people per year for this purpose. Perhaps because of this, Musa's early reign was spent in continuous military conflict with neighboring non-Muslim societies. But that don't sound anything like the noble black king they was talking about earlier. It says in 1324, while in Cairo, Musa said that he had conquered 24 cities and their surrounding districts. That's outstanding. Under pilgrimage to Mecca, it says, Musa was a Muslim and his Hajj or pilgrimage to Mecca made him well known across North Africa and the Middle East. To Musa, Islam was an entry into the cultured world of the Eastern Mediterranean. It says, he would have spent much time fostering the growth of the religion within his empire. When Musa departed Mali for the Hajj, he left his son Muhammad to rule in his absence. Musa made his pilgrimage between 1324 and 1325, spanning 2,700 miles. His procession reportedly included 60,000 men, all wearing brocade and Persian silk, including 12,000 slaves, who each carried 4 pounds of gold bars, and heralds dressed in silks bearing gold staffs, organized horses, and handled bags. It says, Musa provided all necessities for the procession, feeding the entire company of men and animals. Those animals included 80 camels, which each carried 50 to 300 pounds of gold dust. Musa gave the gold to the poor he met along his route. Musa not only gave to the cities he passed on the way to Mecca, including Cairo and Medina, but also Medina, California? Nah, couldn't be. but also traded gold for souvenirs. It was reported that he built a mosque every Friday. Shahibab al-Din al-Umari. Sorry if I'm killing that. Who visited Cairo shortly after Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca, noted that it was a lavish display of power, wealth, and unprecedented by its size and pageantry. Musa made a major point of showing off his nation's wealth. Musa and his entourage arrived at the outskirts of Cairo in July of 1324. They camped for 3 days by the pyramids of Giza before crossing the Nile into Cairo on 19th of July. While in Cairo, Musa met with the Mamluk Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad, whose reign had already seen one Mansa Sakura make the Hajj. Al-Nasir expected Musa to prostrate himself before him, which Musa initially refused to do. When he did finally bow, he said he was doing so for God alone. Despite this initial awkwardness, the two rulers got along well and exchanged gifts. Musa and his entourage gave and spent freely while in Cairo. Musa stayed in the Karafa district of Cairo and befriended its governor, Ibn Amir Hajib, who learned much about Mali from him. Musa stayed in Cairo for 3 months, departing on 18th October with the official caravan to Mecca. And I really could have skipped all of that because I don't want to spoil the adventure for you guys. This is stuff that you really need to look into on your own to get the most out of it. But of course, everybody knows that. And don't get it twisted. Of course, I know that if you hover over the link, it gives you the information, more information that they want you to have. But what I want you to pick up on is, what if that link wasn't there and you had to actually look that up yourself? Then what would you find? Would it automatically take you to the information they want you to have? Or is this a good example of how they get you to assume that you already know? So we got to get out of that. Moving on. But to finish it on up, it says, Musa's generosity continued as he traveled onward to Mecca, and he gave gifts to fellow pilgrims and to the people of Medina and Mecca. Wait, they had pilgrims in Mecca? Oh, they talking about the people that made the pilgrimage? So then why do they call the pilgrims in America then? That's pretty darn strange. It says, while in Mecca, conflict broke out between a group of Malian pilgrims and a group of Turkic pilgrims in the Masjid al-Haram. Swords were drawn, but before the situation escalated further, Musa persuaded his men to back down. Musa and his entourage lingered in Mecca after the last day of the Hajj. Traveling separately from the main caravan, their return journey to Cairo was struck with catastrophe. By the time they reached the Su, many of the Malian pilgrims had died of cold, starvation, or bandit raids. Whoa, Kimosabi. I'm gonna need y'all to pump y'all brakes up one more time. Just press the stop button for me one more time. Just stop. See, I can't even finish the article because so many things just not adding up. Now remember, just right up here it said his procession reportedly included 60,000 men. Is that the same 60,000 from Trail of Tears? Nah, it couldn't be. Just couldn't be. Oh, okay. And now they all wearing, let's just say, Versace. Look at that. That is one nice Versace right there. And Persian silk, including 12,000 slaves. I ain't even gonna get into that. They each carry 4 pounds of gold bars and heralds dressed in silk bearing gold staffs, organized horses, and handbags. It said 80 camels, each carrying, let's just say, 50 pounds of gold. Now, how do you starve to death and you walking with 80 camels with 50 pounds of gold apiece? How do you starve to death? Tell me. Somebody tell me how. It's got to be one of the best riddles ever. How do you starve to death when you got 80 camels, each carrying 50 pounds of gold? And you got 60,000 men wearing Versace and shit, Persian silk. How do you starve to death? Cause let's just say you ran out of gold and ain't nobody to even buy nothing from. Cause I'm assuming you probably in the desert. And I've never actually eaten camel meat, but I'd surely eat some. I bet I would eat some before I starve to death in the desert. That any of them starve to death. Any amount of this entourage. And now, mind you, he got thousands of armed soldiers, trained military soldiers, even if they are strapped up with gold chains and jewelry and Versace and all other kinds of jewelry. Or maybe not, but we could assume that they had the best of whatever. And you telling me on the way back from the Hajj to Mecca, the entourage is getting robbed and dying from cold and starvation. Bandit raids. Sounds like maybe the bandits that raided them and the bandits that raided the Trail of Tears might have something in common. But to finish this on out, it says, having run out of money, Musa and his entourage were forced to borrow money and resell much of what they had purchased while in Cairo before the Hajj. And Musa went into debt to several merchants such as Saraj al-Din. However, al-Nasir Muhammad returned Musa's earlier show of generosity with his own gifts. I'm not even going to read the rest of that. I'm not going to even read the rest of any of it. Well, I actually did already. I'm not, you guys read the rest for yourself. I don't need to go any deeper into that to know that it's mostly nonsense. And again, I only came here for this particular story because they like telling this story. It's uniform across the board. It's usually the same no matter where you read in this story. And now we have a better idea of why they like telling this story. So I'm going to just leave this right here for now and let that simmer and marinate and let that resonate. And we're going to touch back on this in the future. Stay tuned for the next part.